Hi everyone, welcome. So today we are discussing RFP, request for price. So this topic is typically a mature topic, but I'm bringing this topic early on so that a person in a layman language understand what exactly goes behind and how to start commissioning at site. How this topic is for owners, how to prepare RFP for commissioning. So let's just dive in. Think about the last time you bought a car. You probably expected the air conditioning, the brakes, and the electrical system to work perfectly. The second you draw it off, and right now imagine buying a giant multi-million dollar commercial building. You're thinking of only to find out to move in that the heating doesn't talk to the ventilation system, the backup generator doesn't kicks in, and when the power goes out, it's all mess. That is where commissioning provider or CXP comes in. They are the ultimate quality control experts for the building. Today we are going to look at how to write a perfect request for price to hire the right CXP, get highly competitive bids, and save your project from massive headaches. Let's dive in. So, who exactly is CXP? Think of them like a highly specialized home inspector, but for a giant building. Here is the key. They don't work for contractor and they didn't design the building. They work directly for you, the owner. Their only job is to run independent health checkups on the major equipment before you accept the keys. Now, why do we need a formal RFP or request for price to hire them? Well, if you don't define exactly what you want them to perform or test, you'll get wild mismatch price codes. A structure RFE makes sure every bidder is quoting on exact same playground. So, what are these experts actually testing? We can break it down into three main areas. First, the HVAC system. This is the lung of your building, the heating, cooling, chillers, airflow units. It usually where most of the energy bill goes. So we need it perfectly working. Second, the electrical system. Think of this as a nervous system. Generators, emergency backup systems, smart lighting controls, and third, plumbing and life safety. We need to make sure that if the fire alarm sounds, the building exhaust fans automatically push smoke away from the exit doors, and the sprinkler systems are ready to react. We list all of these in RFE, so there are zero surprises. A lot of people make the mistakes of hiring their CXP at very end of the construction, right before move in the day. Before moving, lot of owners make mistakes. They hire CXP or commissioning people right before handover. That's like trying to study for a final exam night before before it is very stressful and expensive. It's just like you are trying to pass the exam just by reading the night before it. So this is the general mistakes normally happens when selecting a CXP. Instead, we look at the commissioning as a five-stage journey. If you bring your CXP in early during design phase, they can spot blueprints, mistakes before any concrete is poured. Catching an error on a piece of paper called pennies, catching that same error after the walls are up can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Your RFP should ask for pricing broken downs across all five these stages. To get bids that you can easily compare side by side, your RFP package needs four main ingredients. First, the owner project requirements or OPR. This is just a plain English document saying here is what I want my building to do. For example, I want the office temperature kept at exactly 72 degrees. Second, though we cannot operate at 70 degrees, this was just an example. We can ask him, I want my temperature at 22 degrees. Second, the blueprint and equipment list bidders need to know exactly how many air conditioners, light switches they are testing. Third, a standardized bid sheet. If you let bidders use their own spreadsheet templates, you will get 10 different formats that are impossible to compare. We force them to use ours. And fourth, use standard contract terms so they know the rules of engagement from the day one. So now the question comes, how does a CXP figure out their price? They look at the relationship between your goals, the OPR, and the engineer's plan, which is called the basis of design. If your goal is to have a highly energy efficient building with smart automated sensor, CXP has to write more checklists, do more hands-on testing. By giving them crystal clear blueprints upfront, they don't have to guess. When service providers have to guess, they always assume the worst and add risk premium, meaning they charge you a higher price just in case they are complicated. Clear info equals lower prices. So how should you pay your CXP? There are two main ways to set up the contract. First, there are fixed fee or flat rate. This like buying a plane ticket. You know the exact price upfront. It's great for budget predictability because the risk of running over hours is on the provider, not you. Second option is time and material or paying hourly. Think of this like a taximeter. It's great if your project schedule is chaotic, or if you are mixing up an old building where you don't know what you will find, but it requires you to keep a very close eye on timesheets so the bill doesn't run away from you. So here comes the analysis. Now let's talk about what actually makes commissioning expensive. Most people assume that building size is the number one cost driver. But take a look at this chart. While size is important, system complexity is real champion here. Think about it. A massive empty warehouse, which is very easy to test because it's just big open space. But a small hospital, a high-tech laboratory is packed with complex airflow, pressure controls, and safety systems. That makes more time to test, which drives the prices up more than raw square footage. So to summarize, it depends upon the floor area, the system complexity, and the testing location, and our sustainability targets. So more or less, the complexity drives the RFP of commissioning. Secondly, by the square feet size of the building, then labor risk and sustainability. Where does the money go? Here is the typical breakdown of CXP fee is spent across a project. As you can see, almost half of the budget, 45%, is spent during acceptance phase. This is the peak construction period where they are physically present on the site. But pay close attention to the 15% allocated to occupancy and closeout. You want to make sure your contract keeps same money held back for this final phase. Why? Because you need them to come back and test heating in the dead of winter and test the cooling in the peak of summer. If you pay them 100% upfront, it is much harder to get them back to this seasonal testing. We want to make sure the actual people working your job site level have real aggregated engineer certification. Second, a sample test script. We want to see how detailed they are. Are they using generic checklists they found online, or they do customize their tests for your specific equipment? Third essential element is estimated time hours. If a bidder quotes a suspiciously low price, it usually because they only plan to spend few hours on site. And fourth, hourly rate card, which protects you if the project gets delayed and you need extra help later. Now, evaluation and selection matrix. How do you how do we pick the winner? How do we pick our CXP? We use weighted scorecard. It is tempting to know to just pick the cheapest bid, but in commissioning that is highly risky. A cheap, low effort audit means your building might open with hidden defects, the cost a fortune to fix later. We recommend giving technical competence the highest weightage, 35%, followed by price at the 30%. We also give 20% to the team chemistry because these folks will be working closely with your contractors, and 15% to their track record on similar projects. The risk and mitigation for CX onboarding. Let's look at some real world red flags to watch out during the bid phase. First, beware of what we call the post it note bid. This is when a company gives you a single lump sum price with zero breakdown of their hours or how many site visits they plan to make. Always reject this. Second, define retesting rules. If the contractor installs a fan backward, the CXP has to fail it and come back to test it again. Make sure your contract say that if the contractor fails to test, they pay the CXP retesting fee, not you. And the third, have a plan for scheduled delays so you don't get hit with unexpected extension fees if construction runs over. So here we have a trend analysis for early integration. Here is some simple math to show you leadership team. This chart tracks total project change order cost. The amber line shows what happens when you bring the CXP in late. Because they weren't involved in design, they catch errors after things are built, leading to chaotic, expensive change orders. The blue line shows early integration. Yes, you spend a little bit more on professional fees during the design phase, but your total project cost stays flat, controlled, and simple. ROI formula below prove it the cost of defects prevented plus the energy saving you will get always be far higher than the fee you pay to a good CXP. Now, the best practice checklist. As a wrap up, here are 4 simple golden rules for your next project checklist. 1. Make sure CXP contract include drawing reviews during the design phase. 2. Specify the sample size. For example, tell them to test 100% of the major equipment like boiler, but only 20% of smaller devices like office thermostats. 3. Enforce digital reporting so you can see their progress in real time. And fourth, most important, never let the general contractor hire the CXP. The CXP is your independent auditor. They must report directly to you to ensure total honesty. So writing a great RFP might take a little extra effort upfront, but it pays off tenfold when your building opens on time, on budget, and running beautifully. Thank you so much for your time today. I would love to open up the floor now to hear about your projects and answer any questions you might have open. Let's chat. Just write down the questions in the comment box. I will happy to answer them.